I mean, up until COVID, right? And that was simply because of their age and because of the risks of COVID for all of us in different ways. But yeah, that's exactly what you would experience is President and Mrs. Carter often walking hand in hand. There's a lot of pictures and a lot of footage of them holding hands, walking down the strip, you know, going into the antique mall, going into the Buffalo Cafe, etc. So I think if you talk to anybody, especially people who are lifelong residents here, you can hear, you know, an incredible story.
Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. Katie is staying a little bit warm right now, but she's here as well, and we are out to pay our respects to the hometown of Jimmy Carter, who just passed away. Thought it'd be nice to come out and see, you know, he grew up here, lived here through his whole life outside of the presidency, and I want to see how the town's reacting to his passing. So Daze with Jordan the Lion, you all, it begins right now. He was a good human, lived out a good life. So he's going to be buried here, and it looks like they've got barriers up all over town already for his funeral. Can't come to Plains and not check out the big smiling peanut. This was part of Jimmy's 1976 presidential rally. It was a little gimmick that they had and eventually moved here. We noticed as we were driving through town there is a lot of security, a lot of police cars, a lot of barriers up, so his funeral must be happening very, very soon. This is your first time seeing this town, and just driving through it, it's pretty amazing already, isn't it?
It is. They're obviously bustling around. He was probably one of the most important things to come to this town. His family is here, his brother's service station is here, and this is going to be big. Yeah, they still have the President Carter signs up all over town, so we're going to head into the heart of the town, and that's where you could see footage of him being interviewed by the press a couple of years ago, where he was talking about his everyday life here in Plains. So I just talked to some of the officers that are kind of out here and asked them if they knew any details, and what they said was that he's going to be buried next Thursday. They said right now they're just securing all the locations. He will, his body will be brought to the Carter Center in Atlanta for a few days, and then he will go to Washington, D.C., and he'll be there, and they'll do a service for him there, and then he'll be brought back home here to Plains, and he'll be buried on his, not the boyhood property, but the property that he and Rosalynn have lived in. And I was curious because, you know, a lot of the former presidents' last homes get opened up for tours and things eventually, and I asked if they knew if that would be the case since they're going to be buried there, and they said they didn't know that for sure. So I would kind of assume, because he has a really famous wood shop inside the house and everything there, I would assume maybe at some point they will open that up and maybe the burial site will be able to be visited by the public, but they said right now they just didn't know. So this was the president's high school that he and Rosalynn both went to, and it's now a museum. So if you come to town, they have a lot of information about the Carters in there and some artifacts and things like that. Don't believe it's open today, but they are memorializing the president with wreaths on the door. There you can see some more of the barriers here in town. This gigantic sign honoring President Carter is actually at the Plains General Store, which was the former store that Jimmy worked at. So they actually have a historical plaque, and this is where you get the famous peanut butter ice cream here in town that everybody always talks about. The old Carter Peanut Warehouse. Built in 1903 and intended as a hotel, the building was housed retail services on the ground floor and the 20-bed Wise Sanitarium on the top floor. The Wise brothers used this location until the 20s when they moved to a newly completed hospital. In 1934, Earl Carter owned and operated a peanut business in the Earl Carter Insurance Agency from this location. Earl Carter ran this business until his death in 1953. Jimmy Carter returned home from the Navy to run the peanut warehouse at this location until 1961,
From this building, President Carter launched his senatorial and gubernatorial campaigns. And here you can get your picture where it says, "I went nuts in Plains, Georgia." So we'll go in and check out the store. This is a must stop. Hopefully we can ask the people here their thoughts on the president, who was beloved in this town, as you can imagine. Look at that. Here's where they're giving out samples as soon as you walk in for peanut butter ice cream, fried peanuts. Some fried peanut action here. Very nice of them. There's that peanut butter ice cream we're going to try. Oh, it's glorious. Oh, wow.
They used to make their own cigarettes to hand out on Air Force One back, you know, in the 70s,
yeah,
right?
That's amazing. They didn't want to be on camera, but I was asking, like, how accessible was he? And they said before his health failed, you'd see him almost every day in town. This is a collection of a local that's collected Jimmy's stuff throughout his life, and there's a signed book in there, and a Jimmy Carter coloring book.
Thank y'all for coming in.
Tip from one of his coffees. And they also sell Billy beer cans, if you remember when his brother had Billy beer, Billy Carter.
How are y'all doing today?
Did you see
Getting some of the ice cream. That looks good enough. I'm gonna get that. You got the peanut butter and chocolate swirl, huh? Nice. Pretty cool to be in here and see that the building is still used and know that, you know, President Carter's wife, when they moved back here, she was not happy about that. But he just had a sense of duty that he felt like he needed to come back and run his father's business. So he was always the down-home boy that he presented himself as. Cool to see it still in use. Just to think he would have been working here every day. Golden peanut necklaces. Bumper stickers, nice. Flags all blowing. And any one of these benches right here up and down this walkway he could have sat on and talked to someone at some point. Kind of neat to think of. Look over here. They even have Rosalynn Smith Carter Childhood Garden. Just about every store has something to Jimmy on it. Just tells you how much they loved him. But right here, last time I was here, I was showing how he did like an interview with like Good Morning America or something. He was walking right towards us, giving a tour. Look, there's a painting of him in the window. The trading post over here, the Plains trading post, not to be confused with the general store, they sell his signed books in here, and they have a ton of his old presidential buttons. Look at that peanut. Notice that sign in there, it says Jimmy Carter for cancer survivor. That was crazy. He was like 90 years old and found out he had cancer, and they basically told him, it's probably not going to look good, and he managed to beat it. And of course he was the oldest living president and only one to make it to 100. Look at all the political buttons. And I love this store because they have tons of his signed books here. Look at all the, these are all political posters. These are all buttons. Just about anything political you could ever want, you're gonna find here. I lust for Carter. That's a good one. Give a smiling man a chance. That's really cool. Look at that. Hand-picked jumbo peanut, and it's got the little light peanut mascot on it. And at the bottom it says Carter Warehouse Company.
We're the largest political memorabilia retailer in the country. Everything in here is authentic. We go back to 1856.
Don't forget to ask about those when you come in. They're mostly all 40 bucks. Haven't really seen any rest in peace signs or anything like that. I kind of figured we'd see some of that by now. Definitely media walking around. We've seen photographers and different people kind of looking around. That's a antique store. And there they have Rosalynn Carter, Butterfly Trail. There you see a couple of media trucks. This place is actually called Friends of Jimmy Carter. At the very top they have a sign. You can see there's another peanut to President Carter. Welcome to Plains. And then right at the very top, let's go on in. This is a nice cardboard cutout.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, that's nice.
Kim can get on the back seat for it.
The Allman Brothers Band playing a benefit for Jimmy Carter. And the Friends of Jimmy Carter office is actually run by his niece. So they have a lot of stuff. Here's Willie and Jimmy Carter together. There's Billy. So I was hoping, you know, today as I came to town, I've been here a couple of times. I was telling you that I just love this town and how friendly it feels, and that it kind of is always embodied what I thought President Carter would be. And I was hoping to get maybe some perspective from people that live here in town. I was amazed to find out that you actually moved to this town. You're not from here.
That's
and
right.
What brought you here?
Well, at first it was work. So I, of course, President and Mrs. Carter are lifelong heroes of mine. Just the way that they embody peace and love and the ability to see people as human beings and as equals. So I've always hopefully tried to model a little bit of how I live based on how they've exampled how to live, right? So Plains has always been fascinating to me, that a president and a former first lady would be from such a small community, and yet their influence would go to the world. And so when I first got here, it was just as a tourist. It was just because they're my heroes. I went to Sunday school, I heard President Carter teach, and then I was fascinated by the town. I met people like his
And
niece.
that they never left.
Oh.
What's crazy, like
Yes, that's
some
right, never
people
left.
grow up in a small town, but then they leave. They never left.
Right, outside of his Navy years, that's right. And he was drawn back in through his dad's influence in town. When his dad was on his deathbed, died in his 50s, from cancer, that is what impacted him to move back, because he realized what an influence you could have by being a part of a community, by being a part of a neighborhood. And so, yeah, it's amazing at this place. I've heard Kim say that these sidewalks, these streets are the ones that raised him. And
That's
raised her
amazing.
too.
And there's a lot of footage of him walking around this town. How accessible was he to people when he was healthy?
Well, I mean, up until COVID, right? And that was simply because of their age and because of the risks of COVID for all of us in different ways. But yeah, that's exactly what you would experience, is President and Mrs. Carter often walking hand in hand. There's a lot of pictures and a lot of footage of them holding hands, walking down the strip, you know, going into the antique mall, going into the Buffalo Cafe, etc. So I think if you talk to anybody, especially people who are lifelong residents here, you can hear, you know, incredible stories.
Well, yeah, one of the people I met last time I was here, he didn't want to be on camera, but he said President Carter never allowed you to call him Mr. Carter. He always said, "I'm Jimmy."
Well, and you'll hear a lot of people who grew up with him call him Mr. Jimmy and Miss Rosalyn,
Oh,
which is a very
very
Southern
cool.
thing anyway, right? That's how we were raised to call our superiors, our adults.
Now, I knew that they lived here, but I guess I didn't realize that they only had one home. And we were talking about that because Mrs. Carter is buried there, and I've been by there before, and I was always kind of curious what the plan was after their passing, if the house would be open, if their grave would be open for people to visit. Do you know what the plan is possibly for that?
Well, you're right that they've only owned one home, which is pretty incredible to think of these international leaders still living in the ranch house that they built in the 60s, right? That's incredible in of itself. But yeah, I think that's always been President and Mrs. Carter's strategy to help continue to make Plains a viable place and to bring people in. So you have his boyhood farm, you'll have their, you know, modern residents. They'll be buried there, of course. Mrs. Carter already is and President Carter will be. So that's all strategic for visitors. What the timeline is for when that home will be opened, not sure, but definitely there will be plans that that'll be made available to the public.
I was hoping, because I had seen interviews with him talking about how he spent so much time woodworking there, and I was always kind of hoping maybe we would get to see the real, you know, this guy who traveled all over the world teaching people to farm and teaching them to help take care of themselves, just to get to see what his everyday life was like, what he surrounded himself with.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, right? You can already do that at the Boyhood Farm, see what it was like to grow up 100 years ago in this area, because it's still a working farm, and that house, from what I understand, was only owned by one other family after his family, and then it became a part of the Park Service and became a historic site. So all that to say, yes, you can see the town that he not only grew up in, but that he lived his entire life in, where he grew up, and then you'll be able to see where he lived his adult life. And so,
was that their intention after their passing, to draw people to town or make the town bigger or just be remembered? Or
I don't know about making the town population bigger. The population has always been around 700 people for, what, Kim, 200 years? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole of the community, the life of the town. But I think, yes, to draw people in, right? The Park Service does an incredible job of interpreting the sites. You can tell you've been here. The town has a charm.
The campaign headquarters are here. Mm-hmm. Everything that you would want to know about him, I mean, is here.
Yeah, so definitely, it's meant to live, you know, for the rest of time, and allow people to see a glimpse into, well, I think the idea that truly anyone could be president, could be a civil servant to this country, because that's in the modern presidency, or the most recent years of the presidency, wealthy individuals.
Yeah,
become
yeah,
president, right?
absolutely.
But this could be an example that maybe we can find a president among...
The American dream is possible for a little peanut farmer.
That's right.
Well, thank you for talking to me today.
Yeah.
What do you think the town, how's the town coping with the loss of their most famous citizen? Each
person differently. Each person knew them in different ways, knew President Carter in different ways, some as family, some as friends, some as neighbors, some as a hero. So grief's gonna take on a different look, but I describe it as tender. Obviously lived a full life at 100 years of age, so I would not call it a tragedy to pass at that age, but it's always sad to lose a pillar of community. There's gonna be a gap that's left, and I think people of all relationships to him will feel that space, that gap, for a time to come. But that just means it's our turn to pick up the baton of peace and love and embody it.
Yeah, and I feel like it's quite a gesture when you walk through this town. I want to say you can't go a block without seeing a thank you, President Carter, but I have to actually say you can't go a building without seeing a thank you, President Carter, or Mr. Carter, or Jimmy, or something. So that says a lot when everybody in your town loves you.
Yeah, well, I'll offer this up, Jordan. I think Plains is a pretty split ticket when it comes to voting, and yet everyone, you know...
voting for the man, not the party, almost.
Well, right. So I think, you know, Plains votes for the Carters every time.
Awesome. Thank you for talking to us.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan.
So right over here at the Plains Pharmacy, they have this great mural showing the path to the White House. How cool is that? You have the depot right here, which is actually right there. That was his campaign headquarters. And they keep that open that you can go check out. Here's Maranatha Baptist Church. That's the church that he not only went to, but taught Sunday school up until a few years ago. There's the presidential seal. Billy Carter service station, which we will go try and take a look at. There's a lot of stuff over there right now. Barriers and barricades and stuff. Jimmy's boyhood home, which we'll end on. And the high school that we've already seen. So here's the Jimmy Carter presidential campaign headquarters train depot, and it talks about right here on the historical plaque that in 1975 he launched a 2-year campaign for the presidency. At first, an unknown referred to as Jimmy Who was inaugurated as America's 39th president on January 20th, 1977. They keep it open. You can go see it all, and we shall. And what's cool is that everybody we've met has been very friendly, ultra friendly. And we met a guy that had just moved here a few months ago, and he said, everybody I've met in the whole county's this way. So this is where the campaign headquarters was, inside of here.
Hello.
Hello.
Get out of your way here.
There you can see where we just walked in, how bustling it was when the media came to cover Jimmy, and that's what it looked like during the time it was his campaign headquarters. As you'll walk through here, you'll read all kinds of history about this, and the reason that they chose the depot, honestly, for the campaign headquarters was because it was the only place in town that they had a bathroom that the reporters could use and people could use, so it became the makeshift campaign headquarters. Look at this, they've got an old TV in here. You can watch him speak. Let's check this out. There's his history in the Navy and a little bit of the history of everything, and then in here, when he won. So right there's the sign that says behind this door is the reason the Carters chose this building for the campaign headquarters. It was the only available building in Plains with a bathroom, and the bathroom's no longer in service. They've got a ton of political buttons here on display as well. This is cool. This is a picture of his mother, Miss Lillian, at the campaign headquarters greeting people. There he is right out front, right here on the corner of the building. Actually, that would have been, he would have been standing right there basically. So that photo of Jimmy that we saw inside there is when I was pointing out the window, saying it would have been taken right there, right there. Then there's a little gravestone over here for the depot dog, and his name was Jay Who. Born in 1976, so you know where they got that name from. Rest in peace, Jay Who. Like Jimmy Who. And then over here is the Rosalynn Carter Butterfly Trail. It's a little garden right here by the train tracks. And the Billy Carter service station was over there. That was where all the press made their headquarters to cover Jimmy. You can see all the barricades out. Look at that, a payphone right there. That is old school. So here's the Billy Carter service station we're gonna go to next. It's crazy to see how much they lock up the city in the days leading up to something like this. We were shocked as we were driving in. We were thinking, they're not having his funeral today, are they? But Katie and I did ask, and they said that even though they have it all secured and are getting everything in place, that everything is still open and we are still able to visit and look at everything. So I don't know if they're having something in there, but they have a bunch of chairs set up. I assume they're probably, I know that the friends of Jimmy Carter were saying they're doing interviews with ABC and several other media outlets. Here's Billy Carter service station. And last time I was here, they left the door unlocked, so I think it's always unlocked. And everything that we showed you earlier, all the general store and all that stuff, that was all right over there. Let's see if we can get in there today. I love the old Coke machine and everything. So when you come into the service station, they have a ton of history on Mills Jennings, who had the service station first, and then Billy Carter, who then bought it, and there's just tons of Billy Carter memorabilia. He was quite a focal point during Jimmy Carter's presidency in some ways, coping with Billy. Some of his clothes on display, some of the stuff he wore on Hee Haw, which is kind of funny. Peanut Olympics? So this is what I'm curious about. I don't know what's going on here, but they have some chairs set up and things like that, so maybe it's a media event. What do you think of this little town so far?
I can understand why Jimmy and Rosalyn wanted to stay here. We've been here for just a short amount of time, but it is so quaint. Everybody is so friendly, and it just kind of feels like you're stepping back in time.
And you'd kind of be left alone, but not. I mean, you'd be friends with people here, but then nobody'd really bother you, I think. So we're gonna go over and see one last thing over here, and then we're gonna go out to where he's gonna be buried. We're going back over here where the train tracks are. There's something that looks like a headstone dedicated to Jimmy right here in town. And it's almost like they put 2 seats right here for the both of them. I think anybody can use them, but it almost feels like it just should be for them. But right here, Plains honors Jimmy Carter. And at the very bottom it says, Plains thanks Willie Nelson for his contributions. So, at the top we have the presidential seal. Then as you move down it says Plains honors her own Jimmy Carter, 39th President of the United States of America from 1977 to 1981. Then over here said, America did not invent human rights invented America. One of his quotes. There's lots of flowers here. That's where it's kind of an odd dedication to Willie Nelson. And then all of his achievements of public service right here says Sumter County School Board from 55 to 62, member of the Georgia State Senate 1963 to 67, governor of Georgia from 1971 to 75, and president from 77 to 81. And the flags are at half-mast in his honor. It is a nice little town if you can make it here. Actually, a small little detour. We took Rosalynn Carter Trail down a little further, and this was her childhood home. Figured since we're going to show you his, we should show you hers as well first. Now let's go see their, what's I guess considered the state park. That's where they lived. It's going to be crazy here in a couple of days. So Jimmy lived right up the road from the main part of town. We're not even talking 2-3 minutes even. So there's a guard shack down there and a bunch of fencing, and this is where there was footage around the election time where they were wheeling him out to like see people or whatever, and it was actually out in this garden. I wasn't sure what the plan was for this when I was here before, but we have since found out they consider this like the Jimmy Carter National Park basically. And so at some point, as they told us at the Friends of Jimmy Carter, this is going to be open for people to come visit and hopefully see the house. Their house right back there, and Rosalynn is currently already buried here. Jimmy will be buried here in about a week. And as you heard them tell us, this is not only their last home, it was their only home. How cool is that? You can see there's benches out there and benches over here. They probably walk these grounds constantly throughout their life, holding hands like Katie and I do. Yeah, I believe the house is right over in that direction. Actually, you can see it. You can see it over there. It's just a ranch house. I couldn't see it last time. I think the trees were thicker, but can definitely see it over there now. So nice enough to have some information out here. And there's a photo of them right on the front step of their home. And so that's what we were barely able to see through that right over in there. And I mentioned that woodworking. Jimmy liked to paint and woodwork and stuff. That's his woodworking office. And I saw in interviews, he said he was in there almost every day making something. So they have a map here that we're right here. And that's obviously the drive that you see over there. And there's the house that we could see barely through the residence. So hopefully at some point we'll be able to walk around all the grounds. Tennis court, pool. There's Mrs. Carter in her office. So I didn't see it marked anywhere where the gravesite is or where they'll be. Kind of curious if it'll be behind the house where the pool and tennis courts were. Will it be out here in the park area? I mean, it's already, obviously she's already buried, but. So we couldn't find, they don't have it noted on this map where she's at, but we did see that they have one of the dogs buried there, and Katie had found online. What did you find that gives us a little tip as to where they'll be?
It was a recent article just within the last couple of days of his passing where they talked about how both Rosalyn and Jimmy would both be buried here, and it said that they had a favorite willow tree on the property that they were both going to be laid to rest under. So somewhere out here it's there, so maybe by where they buried their pup, or we don't know.
Maybe, because it does look like, if you look right here, they do have a tree there, and it could be a willow tree. See that? That must have been their house number. But we were told that, you know, everything is, even though he passed and there's a lot of intense security, that we are still allowed to come and take photos and look around and stuff. So we want to go up to the guard shack because up on the fence they have a little memorial tribute. And if this opens next couple of years, we'll come back and check it out. So this is kind of intense if you think about it. When they take him to Atlanta and then take him to DC and everything, his last ride will be right here. He will come down this road. They will turn right here into this guard shack area. They will drive him down the road to the house or somewhere on the property, and that will be the last ride of President Carter. Now let's go see the boyhood home. I don't know how I missed this the first time I was here, but walking in the back entrance of the house, which is straight ahead, there's this discolored piece of cement, and Jimmy Carter has signed it and put his handprints in there. Isn't that cool? And he dated it September 24th, 2010. Here's Jimmy at his farm on the horse. There's an outhouse and some of the animals over here in the house. Here are some pecan trees. They say money on the trees. Miss Lillian and Mr. Earl planted the grove soon after they moved here in 1928. Miss Lillian would harvest the pecans and sell them nearby in Americus. So now we're going to enter their back door and their lanai and everything. Sun porch. Nice. And it's a free guided tour. You don't have to pay anything. They do have the park services, park rangers out here. But there, Earl and Lillian Carter home. So you just kind of let yourself in and take the tour yourself, which to me is crazy that they just trust people to come in and see the Carter family home. There's their kitchen. Katie, you think you could cook a good meal in here?
Wow. Look at that oven.
Yeah.
When I was a boy, I was strongly influenced by my Uncle Tom Gordy, who served in the Navy, stationed in the Pacific.
Jimmy's room.
And he would often send me letters and souvenir gifts from China, Japan, and Philippines, other places that he visited. One of the presents he sent me was a small model of a Chinese junk or ship. Of course, that was one of my most cherished possessions.
Here's his baseball bat.
One of his memories was a Christmas morning when I was a little boy. I had long wanted a pony and was discouraged from expecting it, but I woke up one Christmas, I was ill, couldn't get out of the house because I had measles. And my mother and father said that maybe Santa Claus left me something outside in the yard. So I raised a window in this bedroom, looked out, and there was a pony.
That's probably the pony we saw the photo of him
I have
on.
been more excited in my life. And of course, then for years, I rode my pony, whom I called Lady. She had colts that I cherished, and it really was one of the transforming moments of my boyhood.
Very cool. This is where he would have slept.
As a boy, I was an avid reader, as was my mother. Whenever I was asked what I wanted for Christmas for Santa Claus to bring me, I always said books. Reading was really my major contact with the outside world. You know, what happened in Africa with Tarzan, what happened with Tom Swift and his adventures in scientific development of those days. It was reading and the books that opened my eyes to the world that I didn't yet know as a boy. That reading habit stuck with me throughout my life, and that's one of the reasons that I still like to read and write books of my own.
Here's the dining room. Wow, look at that spread. Here's their tea, their nice silverware, kerosene lamp. Look at that down home food. Stuffed turkey, corn, deviled eggs, green beans, carrots, sweet tea. There would have been Mother's sewing machine. And we get a little bit more of a intricate look inside where they would have had their breakfast, just outside the kitchen. This is nice that they make so much of it available. Cornflakes, biscuits. Here had been their, oh, I thought I was gonna say record player. No, ice chest. Blocks of ice. And here's a little bit better view going in here of the kitchen. We could see from the side and from, Jimmy had it lucky because Jimmy's bedroom was actually like right directly across that hall. So he got the first smell of the cooking. Here's the bathroom. And their shower. Finally getting an indoor bathroom was a big event in the Carter family. No one complained about bathing in the cold shower with water coming directly from the tank on the Windmill. An even greater blessing was not having to walk outside and across the yard to go to the outhouse. Notice the unique shower head. It's a bucket with holes at the bottom. The faucet on the pipe controlled the flow of the water into the shower. Interesting. Then this takes us into his parents' bedroom. Earl and Lillian. And the crib, baby crib over there. Fireplace. Vanity. Says, although this is South Georgia, the cold days were remembered more vividly than the hot summer times. This room was only place where the Carters tried to keep a fire going full time in the winter. Earl would build up the flame before he left for work. In the dark morning hours, children with goose pimples on their bodies and toes curled up on the icy floor would rush in here and put their clothes on for school in this room. Wow, primitive life. And in here, here's a brown desk. It says Gloria and Ruth's bedroom was in here. Jimmy had two sisters and they shared this bedroom. For birthdays and other special occasions, they would have sleepover company. After falling asleep, guests would awaken and sometimes go into hysterics when the train came by. 2 o'clock every morning, because the train tracks are directly across the street, right there. Yeah, I can imagine that'd scare the life out of you. So the Carters were accustomed to the train passing and usually slept right through all the noise. Huh. And then here was the family living room. Books, nice fireplace, family piano over there. It says, coming in this room from school each day, the children first stopped by the black desk, which they had nicknamed Mother. So that would be that right there. Said their mother's nursing career kept her frequently away from home. She would write down chores for the children and leave their to-do list on the desk. Family gathered in this room following every meal in the evening. Earl prepared the Sunday school lesson and read the newspaper by the oil lamp. When he got out of his favorite chair, the children were quick to try and jump out of their skin to see if he had dropped any change out of his pockets that could possibly be kept by them. So that's where he would read his paper with the oil lamp, and they'd check this chair for coins. And that was the mother desk. And they actually have a little note to Jimmy on the table. It says, bring in firewood, fill the water basin, clean out the fireplace ashes. And then we're gonna go out their front door. We actually came in they start the tour from the back, but right directly across from here was the train. And this is where the family would spend their evenings in the nice weather. So there's the mailbox, the family mailbox. And that was the front of Carter's family home and Jimmy Carter's boyhood home. Pretty neat. There was one little added piece to his story right over here in this building. Here was the family tennis court. And there's the windmill that helped them have the showers. Here's some of the family garden. Some of the things they would have sold. These are the black-eyed peas, cotton, nuts, all kinds of things. This was basically the family store. Was the little general store, since they grew things that could be sold, as we saw, like pecans and peanuts and things like that. They would have this, and people would come by and pretty much buy whatever they needed. Jimmy would talk about throughout his life how they would be sitting there for dinner, and if somebody wanted to come and get a can of something or whatever, he would have to come open the store so they could come buy it.
Because they provided the basic necessities that had to be bought by the workers and by our family as well. What happened usually was that the purchases were on credit, and payment for the different items were made on payday, or sometimes even at the end of the season when the crops were harvested. The stores were convenient for three reasons. One, they were close by, and most of the transportation was on foot. Secondly, the landowner, the larger ones, owned the store in order to make a profit on items sold. And third, the people who lived on the farm or nearby quite often had no credit rating in town, whereas the landowner that owned the store would know them, and if they wanted to buy a pair of shoes or a shirt or some tobacco, they didn't have to worry about credit because they had ready credit, since the landowner knew them well, and since the landowner knew that when he paid them for their work, he could collect the bill. This store was not kept open all the time, but it was open all day Saturday because that was the day for major purchases. That was the day when the workers were paid and when they paid off what they owed. The rest of the week, the store was closed except when somebody wanted to make any kind of purchase. Both we and they were out of the fields during meal times. So almost every time I ever sat down at a meal, someone knocked on the back door and wanted to make a purchase from the store. My daddy would throw the keys across the table to me. I would get up and miss part of the meal, walk out to the store, unlock it, sell 5 cents worth of chewing tobacco or a bottle of castor oil or 2 pounds of sugar, make a ticket showing that the person had bought something on credit, lock the store back up, and go back to our meal. I hardly ever remember going through an entire meal without having to be interrupted to go to the store and open it to make a sale.
Well, my friends, we are going to call it a day from Jimmy Carter's hometown of Plains, Georgia, where he will be laid to rest this week. Thank you all for watching. Rest in peace, Mr. Carter, President Carter. You're now with your soulmate forever. Have a good night, everyone, and goodbye.